Batarangs, grapple guns, and kryptonite rings. It's hard to imagine Batman without his iconic gadgets. Stored in his legendary and Mary Poppins-like utility belt, the Dark Knight always seems to have exactly what he needs to get out of whatever jam he's gotten himself into. Even, shark and other ocean predator related stuff. But it wasn't always like this, and the Caped Crusader's gadget evolution is tied to specific editorial choices early in the Batman's career, leading us to the latest iteration of the character in Matthew Reeves's The Batman. I'll talk about those choices near the end, including how they led to where the character is now, but first let's talk about the gadgets. If Batman isn't slinking away while your back is turned, he's usually shooting a fancy grapple gun off screen or panel and zipping away. Here's a quick side note. So during my research, I discovered that if a grapple gun was strong enough to pull Batman off the street like that onto like a building, that it would tear his arm out of the socket. So just information for you to have. But the grapple and the batrope before it have long and storied histories, with movie and TV adaptations playing a big role. The batrope first appeared on the cover of The Batman's First Appearance, Detective Comics number 27, which you probably knew considering this iconic cover. However, the rope didn't show up inside a Batman story until the next issue, Detective Comics number 28, when Batman used the rope to interrogate a criminal by holding him way up in the air. Yeah, some things never change, do they? The rope was introduced as a silken material, touting its strength and durability, which Batman still brags about today.
You know many knives that can cut my lines?
Not many.
No, not many.
Later, Batman attached a batarang to the end of the rope, which you'll probably recognize from the 60s show and later iterations. He also explored other attachments to improve the efficiency of the batrope, including suction cups, and even a harpoon-enhanced batrope called the Batpoon. I didn't name it. I'm just saying it. And Frank Miller includes a harpoon gun in The Dark Knight Returns, but I don't think it was called the Batpoon in that one. But despite Batman exploring grapple attachments to the batrope that could be fired onto buildings or swung the old-fashioned way, he didn't have the pulling capacity to yank Batman up to the grappling point until Tim Burton's 1989 film, Batman. The hero used what the filmmakers referred to as the spring action reel to use as both a traversal and offensive tool. And it wasn't long before the gadget made its way into other Batman stories, as well as the animated series, Batman Forever, the Nolan films, the Arkham games, the Snyderverse, and now pretty much anywhere you see Batman. And there's actually a rumor that comic writers were told to hold off on using a fully functional grapple gun until Burton's first film was out. Okay, I've done too much on the batrope. Next! Some say that Batman's cape isn't a gadget, but who even cares about that opinion? Batman's cape is one of his most used gadgets, and like everything on this list, it's seen a ton of changes over the years. Initially, the cape was drawn to have structure to it, inspired by the drawings of Leonardo da Vinci. That was scrapped fairly quickly in favor of a fabric cape. Batman writer and co-creator Bill Finger would introduce the Bat Glider in World's Finest Volume 1, 132 in 1963, and the glider was seen multiple times in Batman Year One, the animated series, and even during Batman's iconic and memorable fight with Kite Man.
That's right.
Wouldn't he have crashed anyway due to gravity?
While the cape was often used to slow Batman after jumping from a high place, the cape and glider were eventually combined, like here in Batman Returns. Then, of course, Christopher Nolan introduced the memory cloth cape that could become rigid when given an electrical current. And depending on the writer and iteration of the Caped Crusader, the cape had other abilities too, like protecting Batman against explosions or gunfire, distracting criminals while Batman snuck around them, or just when he has a bad case of gas.
Nothing like a bad case of gas!
Yeah, I agree. Next, lenses and sonar. So this pairing is a little awkward, but I promise it makes sense in that they usually combine along with the Bat computer, or maybe some computer where you type in your name and it explodes, to give Batman an advantage when he's doing a little one-man siege or a little sleuthing. Batman often uses lenses that use facial recognition and different databases to evaluate threats. And yes, he also uses lenses combined with sonar to allow him to see, like...
A submarine, Mr. Wayne, like a submarine.
In Batman the Animated Series, our hero uses lenses to see when he temporarily loses his sight, and in The Dark Knight, Christian Bale's Batman uses sonar tech to map his environment a few times. But while the lenses help make Batman more expressive in comic and animated versions, they haven't quite figured out how to do that as well in live action as some other comic book movie studios. It's true. Did you know that this scene of Ben Affleck's Batman rescuing Superman's Martha
Why did you say that name?
is the very first time a live-action Batman throws a batarang at a criminal? I didn't, and now we both do. And yes, Batman's most famous gadget has seen its fair share of changes through the decades. The original Batarang, which made its debut in Detective Comics number 31, actually did come back to the Caped Crusader when he threw it, which makes sense, and was inspired by the Shadow using boomerangs. The Shadow, of course, being a heavy influence on Batman's early days. The gadget has changed in size, shape, and sharpness depending on the iteration of the character, with blunt Batarangs used in stuff like the animated series and sharp Batarangs being used in stuff like The Dark Knight Returns. And the weapon has had approximately a bajillion variants over the years, as gleefully retconned and chronicled in Detective Comics 244, which also introduces Batarang X, which Batman says is too dangerous, but it's really just a giant Batarang that he rides to get from one place to the other. I guess it has to come down at some point. We've also seen remote control Batarangs, flashbang Batarangs, little poison dart Batarang looking things, sonar Batarangs, and even, and this is not a joke, garlic infused Batarangs when Batman fought Dracula. That happened. It's canon. Everyone knows that DC criminals are a suspicious and cowardly lot, and that's especially true when the Dark Knight takes out a tightly packed crew of armed goons in a cloud of smoke, or maybe just knocking them out with gas to save the wear and tear on his knuckles, because Batmaning is a marathon, not a sprint. Batman first used gas capsules in Detective Comics number 29, and it was also the first time that the Caped Crusader pulled a gadget out of his utility belt, which of course would become a trend. Batman's gas, LOL, has morphed over the years, starting as a choking gas, which was maybe lethal, and later knockout gas, or just tear gas. Gas appears a ton in different Batman media, including the 60s show and in the animated series. Smoke pellets, which just obscure enemies' sight, followed, making their debut in Detective Comics number 33, when Batman uses one to disguise the Bat Gyro, everyone's favorite Bat vehicle, as it's entering the hideout of a villain. The smoke appears more often in the live-action Batman, in Burton's '89 film when Batman is escaping from Axis Chemicals, in The Dark Knight Rises as an ineffective distraction to Tom Hardy's Bane, and in Batman v Superman, but he just uses military-grade smoke bombs because, you know, he's extra mad. And while yes, Batman doesn't use guns, more on that later, he does like to make things go boom. In modern iterations, explosions are probably most used in the Arkham game series as a way to get past crumbling walls, or to put on Batman's hand and punching mutant Joker in the face, but explosives have been more part of modern Batman than Batman past, with Christian Bale's Dark Knight using explosive balls in Batman Begins, then a sticky explosive gun in The Dark Knight, and Batfleck using them because of his general disdain for human life. It looks like we'll get our fair share of explosions in the upcoming The Batman film, so I'm sure all those motorists are fine. Sometimes when I close my eyes at night, I see this. Yes, it looks like we'll see some electrical tasing in Matt Reeves' upcoming movie, but it'll hardly be the first time Batman has used electricity to defeat his foes. The Dark Knight often enhances his other gadgets with electricity, like Batarangs or brass knuckles, or even his grapple gun, yo.
You overplayed your part, yo.
And electricity plays a huge part in the Arkham series, with the remote electrical charge and Batman's electrified gauntlets, which it should be said he scavenged from a very dead electrocutioner. And maybe one of Batman's most important gadget classes is his Kryptonite delivery systems. In the eternal debate of who would win in a fight, Batman or Superman, Kryptonite is the great equalizer. And the Dark Knight has come up with several ingenious ways to deliver it. Often it's just by brute force, like using a kryptonite ring or brass knuckles. Other times it's in a gas that the Man of Steel breathes into his lungs, or a batarang, or a kryptonite catapult, or just in a little baggie. And other times it's a subtle, understated giant spear. Sometimes it's that, too. Honestly, Batman has way too many gadgets to cover in just one video. I mean, he's got rocket boots, lasers, heaters, uppers and downers, freeze grenades, a collapsible bat sword that he hides in his belt, a bat credit card, and so much more. And that's part of the fun, isn't it? That at any moment, the Caped Crusader could pull something out of his trusty utility belt that saves the day just in the nick of time. But how did someone named the Batman evolve to have a million gadgets? Bats aren't usually known for their gadget making. They're known mostly for The answer lies with early DC Comics and Batman editor Whit Ellsworth, who dictated that the Batman wouldn't use a gun and that he wouldn't kill. As the great Bill Finger said, "I had Batman use a gun to shoot a villain, and I was called on the carpet," love that, by Whit Ellsworth. He said, "Never let us have Batman carry a gun again." He was right. And for context, which I got from Batman Unmasked, Analyzing a Cultural Icon by Will Brooker, Ellsworth's journey to make Batman non-lethal was influenced by two things. One, that violent authoritarianism was spreading across Europe and Asia, so the editor wanted to be clear that these heroes were not like them. And two, there was a bit of a panic about the way that comics were poisoning the minds of youth. Originally, Batman was going to be just like the Shadow, who did carry a gun, but not after Ellsworth got through, and now both Batman's refusal to use guns and his refusal to kill are seminal parts of the character. Usually. Though Batman does often have a way of getting around his no-killing rule. Hey, I want to give a big shout out to the DC and the Batman wikis. The wikis they're always a big source of information when I'm working on these videos, and this one especially. There's so much lore with Batman, and both the DC and Batman wikis are incredible sources of information. So just watch this video 7 more times and then head over to the wikis and check those out. I'm just kidding. 5 times is fine. Love you. Bye.
Robin, prepare to rehydrate.